Well, it's an increasingly challenging environment out there, and following some ideas of quality improvement and some methodologies and some understanding of the different issues that will help hospices get better at doing what they're doing, we found we've been able to improve the impact of our work on people. We've been able to evidence that impact so much better, and we've been able to invite successfully our staff to want to contribute to it and to feel a real ownership of it. I know that word is used too much, but actually I believe they really are starting to do that. I read a lovely line this morning, and I'll quote a friend and colleague called Ruth Glassborough who wrote it, and she said, an effective decision is a quality decision multiplied by willingness to implement it. And I think quality improvement, I have seen here, enables us to make more effective decisions because our staff are so willing to implement good decisions, which they come up with. So I don't think there's a single magic bullet that enables teams to embrace quality improvement. I think it's a process. I think it involves a certain investment of time, of leadership, of support, and I think we have seen that that's been worthwhile. We found that staff love to be invited to discover their own confidence, to use new tools to help them understand a problem. We often try and solve a problem before we really understand it. And staff are becoming increasingly adept, and there's different spectra of that increasing confidence, to see a problem and then say, before I solve it, let me try and understand it properly. And they want to be curious, and they want to use different sources of data. And the data might be the numerical, quantitative activity data, or it might be patient stories, or it might be a deep dive into why did one person take much longer than everybody else. It might be surveys. It might be just talking to staff. It might be a process map. All of those are tools to understand what's happening now. And that's just then creating dialogue and creating ideas of, well, what do we want to try and understand a bit more? And let's try and understand it more and do something small about it. And so staff are saying, if they see something that doesn't work, let's try and do something. They're often moving away from the concept of victimhood, whereby they don't have any control over what happens because it's them upstairs' fault or it's the system's fault. And they now want to have a role in trying something. But in order for that to happen, we have tried to introduce a culture where the failure of fear is not something that is inhibitive anymore. Of course, we have to manage risk, and of course, staff have to understand risk. But actually, if you try things, test them, and if it doesn't work, learn from that. And if it does work, great, grow your confidence that it's going to make a difference. People are beginning to understand that change doesn't happen just by believing in it. You have to bring people with you. They have to be good at learning how to work with teams and share problems with their teams, as opposed to think that they can solve, the leaders of teams can solve them on their own. And that concept of change starts with me. And what we've done, and there are of course different methods of quality improvement, what we've done is largely use the model for improvement. But it's not just the tool. 80%, 20%, it doesn't matter what percentage. A percentage of it is the tool you use. But really what makes a tool work is the relational way it's used with people. And that's just as important as saying we're going to adopt lean or model for improvement or some other methodology. So our story is probably about 3 years old. which means that we're not experts at it. We're still learning, and we're still learning from other hospices and other organisations. But if I just give you a small example of the sorts of things that we have done, some of which have worked better than others, but it is a case of needing to pay attention to it, needing to give it some leadership, needing to give it some support. So the trustees have invested in giving me some time to lead it, to have a responsibility for leading quality, and they've committed to supporting me to give staff the opportunity to have a go and to learn from having a go, to learn from what works well, to learn from what didn't work so well. We've invested in running 4 cohorts of a quality improvement skills training program, and we've delivered that to members of staff and volunteers from across the whole spectrum of the hospice, both the clinical, fundraising, shops. Some people have been able to attend more of it. It's not been mandatory, but what we found is that whenever people can come, they wanted to come because it's created that opportunity for them to learn from each other. And the wonderful thing about quality improvement is the immense knowledge that's in a room if only you can liberate it to support each other. We've also brought in external quality improvement support where we've needed it. And I'm delighted and proud to say that one of our teams was a finalist in the BMJ award, having been supported to really deliver improvement. And you'll hear, I think, one of that story from Caroline in a moment. An example of one thing that we've done is we've always had to report for assurance reasons to our trustees about bed occupancy and activities and visits and the number of cancer and non-cancer. But we've supplemented alongside that now, where each team has produced their own start of a quality dashboard. What do they want to know about their service that will help them to make it better, to deliver more value? And we've now got, each team has produced 2 slides of visual improvement in knowledge or in delivery for their services. That's our first one. We're hoping to see whether we can build that, but there seems a sort of excitement generated. And the way we did that was not, it started both as saying, will you produce a quality dashboard? And each team leader at that point, I think, got stuck. They didn't know what it meant. They didn't know where to. So actually, once we found one that we could show them as an example, the next 2 or 3 said, oh, I've got an idea. And they had a go. And within 2 months, every team had worked together as a group such that each team came out with their own quality dashboard. And so what we're seeing is staff are gaining an interest in it. Staff are gaining confidence in it. And the culture of the organisation is incrementally changing through incremental improvements, through using PDSAs, through learning to lead in a humble way as opposed to an imposing way. And I think the last thing I want to say is the value of patients. We could learn so much from patients, and we have learned so much from patients, and I'd encourage people who want to do this work to involve patients very early in this story, because patients can generate ideas for improvement. I'll just talk about one tool that we used, which was quite transformational. And again, you might see something more about this on the video, which was introducing a process map that showed how complicated and how much duplication or weighting was introduced in one of our systems that we thought we knew. The process map was quite transformational in helping people understand the opportunity for improvement.